My SIL kicked me out after my mom's funeral. This is our house, she laughed. Let's check the will. Nova, a 40-year-old mother of two, had been married to Henry, a kind-hearted man, for nearly 2 decades. Life, as Nova often said, was a roller coaster, but the people you shared the ride with made all the difference. That was until her brother James decided to take the wheel. James, 8 years younger than Nova, was a whirlwind of bad decisions and misplaced priorities. He was the kind of guy who thought life owed him a living. Their mother always said he'd grow out of it, but at 30 he was still the family's pet project. It was a Sunday, the kind that demanded a family gathering at their mother's house. Her home was their sanctuary, a place where childhood memories lived in every nook and cranny. As usual, Henry, the kids, and Nova were there, enjoying Mom's famous roast and her stories from a time they only knew through her eyes. That's when James burst in like a storm no one predicted. The door slammed against the wall with a resounding bang, and he strutted in, a smug smile plastered on his face. He wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm was a young woman, barely out of her teens, her pregnant belly blatantly obvious in a dress that was, let's just say, more suited for a nightclub than a family lunch. Henry choked on his tea, sputtering, "James?" Layla, the 12-year-old daughter, asked, "Is she going to be an aunt?" Lucas, their 8-year-old son, was more interested in why Aunt Mila's dress was so shiny. "Family, meet Mila, my fiancée," James announced, as if unveiling a prize. Mom's fork clattered onto her plate. "Fiancée? James, we talked about this." Mila flipped her hair and shot them a look that could curdle milk. "Yeah, we're getting married, and this little guy," she patted her belly, "is James Jr." The room was so quiet you could hear the clock ticking. Henry cleared his throat. "Congratulations, James. That's big news." James smirked. "We're staying here for a while, till we get our own place." Mom tried to smile, but Nova saw the worry in her eyes. It was like watching someone set up camp at the edge of a cliff. That night, after the kids were in bed, Henry and Nova talked. "Nova, your brother," Henry began, his voice low, "he's not just irresponsible, he's taking advantage of your mom." Nova knew he was right. James was a tornado, and they were all in his path. The only question was how much damage he would do before he moved on. The next few days were a blur of James and Mila making themselves at home. Mila turned the living room into her personal lounge, her feet constantly perched on Mom's antique coffee table. James spent his days on his phone, laughing at things no one else found funny. Mom was running around, trying to keep up, making meals, cleaning up after them, never getting a thank you. It was like watching someone slowly deflate. One evening, Nova caught Mom in the kitchen alone, looking older than her years. "Mom, you can't let them walk all over you." Mom sighed. "Nova, he's my son, and that baby, I can't turn them away." Nova wanted to scream to tell her she was being used, but she bit her tongue. Family was complicated, and sometimes love meant turning a blind eye, even when you knew you shouldn't. That's how it began, their new normal. James and Mila, the ungrateful guests, and the rest of them trying to keep the peace in a house that suddenly felt too small. Little did they know, this was just the calm before the storm. Living with James and Mila turned their lives upside down. Every morning started with Mila's loud complaints about her backache or her cravings. She'd stroll into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, demanding breakfast like she owned the place. "Nova, make me some of those pancakes, will you? The baby's craving them," she'd say, not even a please in sight. Nova would grit her teeth, trying to keep her cool. "Sure, Mila, Let me just get Layla and Lucas ready for school first. James was no help either. He'd be lounging on the couch, his feet up on the coffee table, glued to his laptop or gaming. "Hey, when's breakfast?" he'd yell, not even bothering to look up. Mom tried to play peacemaker. "Nova, they're just young. Remember how we were?" Nova wasn't having it. "Mom, we never acted like entitled brats." But Mom would just wave her off, scurrying to wait on them hand and foot. Things got worse as Mila's due date approached. She'd leave a trail of mess wherever she went, dishes piled up, laundry forgotten, and there she'd be on the phone, gossiping for hours. One day, Nova snapped. She found Mila in the living room, her feet once again on the coffee table, talking loudly to a friend. "Mila," Nova said, her voice tight, "this isn't a hotel. You can't just expect everyone to clean up after you." Mila rolled her eyes. "Chill, Nova. I'm pregnant, remember?" James finally chimed in. "Nova, lay off her. Can't you see she's carrying my kid?" "Being pregnant doesn't give you a free pass to be a slob, James," Nova shot back. Mom came in, wringing her hands. "Please, let's not fight. It's not good for the baby." Nova looked at Mom, her face drawn and tired. "This isn't right, Mom. You're running yourself ragged for them." But Mom wouldn't listen. "They're family, Nova. What can we do?" The days dragged on. James and Mila would disappear for hours, leaving Mom to babysit their mess. They'd return with shopping bags, laughing about their day out. One evening, Nova overheard them planning a lavish wedding. "We need the best, babe. It's our day," James said, his arm around Mila. Mila giggled. "Of course, and your mom can help with the expenses, right?" Nova couldn't believe her ears. She confronted them. "You're planning a wedding you can't afford and expecting Mom to foot the bill?" James shrugged. "Why not? She's got the money." Nova was livid. "You can't keep using Mom like your personal ATM, James." But her words fell on deaf ears. They just laughed and continued their planning, leaving Nova fuming. Life in Mom's house had gone from bad to unbearable. Mila had given birth to a baby boy, Liam, and you'd think that would slow them down, but no, it only gave them more excuses. One morning, Nova walked into the kitchen to find Mom washing a mountain of dishes. Mila was sprawled on the sofa, cooing at Liam, while James played some game on his phone. "Morning, Mom. Why are you doing all these dishes?" Nova asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Mom just sighed. "Mila needs to rest, and James is busy." Nova glanced at Mila. "Busy doing what?" "Mila, you can't just leave everything to Mom," Nova said, her voice rising. Mila shot her a look. "I just had a baby, Nova. I'm not supposed to stress myself." James didn't even look up. "Yeah, Nova, back off. You don't know how hard it is." Nova couldn't believe it. "Hard? You call sitting on your butt all day hard?" Mom tried to calm things down. "It's okay, Nova. I don't mind." But Nova was past caring. "No, it's not okay. You're not their servant." It was like talking to a wall. James and Mila just didn't care. They'd leave the house for hours, leaving Mom to take care of Liam. They'd come back with bags of clothes and gadgets, bragging about their great deals. One day, Nova found a receipt on the table, a designer dress for Mila, costing more than what most people make in a week. She confronted them. "Where did you get the money for this, James? And why is Mom paying for your lifestyle?" James shrugged, unbothered. "She's our mom, Nova. She wants to help." Nova was furious. "Help? You're bleeding her dry." Mila chimed in, smirking. If she's willing, why not? Besides, what's it to you? Nova couldn't take it anymore. She had to talk to Mom alone. Mom, you can't keep giving them money. They're using you. Mom just shook her head. I can't abandon them, Nova, especially not Lamb. Nova tried to reason with her, but they're not even trying to be responsible. James is not looking for a job, and Mila's just spending your money like water. Mom looked away, her voice barely a whisper. I know, Nova, but they're my children. I have to help them. Nova felt helpless, watching her family fall apart. James and Mila were like leeches, draining everything and giving nothing back. And Mom, bless her heart, was too kind to see it. Nova didn't know how much more she could take. The breaking point was near, and she feared what would happen when they finally reached it. Things took a turn for the worse when Mom suddenly fell ill. It happened so fast. One day she was her usual self, and the next she was bedridden, looking frail and weak. Nova was at her bedside, holding her hand. Mom, you're going to get through this, she whispered, trying to sound more hopeful than she felt. Mom gave her a tired smile. I'm just worn out, Nova. I've lived a good life. James and Mila were nowhere to be seen, probably out spending more of Mom's money. Nova couldn't hide her anger anymore. Where are they, Mom? Why aren't they here helping? Mom's eyes were sad. They have their own lives, Nova. Don't be too hard on them. But Nova couldn't let it go. Their own lives. They're living off you, Mom, and now, when you need them the most, they're absent. Mom just sighed. It broke Nova's heart to see her like this, defeated and alone. Then the inevitable happened. Mom passed away quietly one night, with Nova by her side. James and Mila were out probably having the time of their lives, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding at home. The funeral was a blur. Nova remembers seeing James and Mila arrive, looking like they were going to a party rather than mourning a loss. Mila's dress was inappropriately short and flashy, even for a funeral. People were murmuring, and Henry squeezed Nova's hand, trying to offer some comfort. After the service, James pulled Nova aside. Nova, we need to talk about Mom's will. Nova was still in shock from losing Mom. Can't this wait, James? He was insistent. No, it can't. I know she left the house to me. We need to sort this out. Nova couldn't believe his audacity. James' mom just died. Can't you show a little respect? But James was relentless. This is important, Nova. I'm her son. I deserve it. The day after the funeral, Nova went to Mom's house to start sorting through her things. But when she got there, Mila answered the door with a smug look. What do you want, Nova? She sneered. Nova was taken aback. I came to collect some of Mom's things. Mila laughed, a cold, harsh sound. Oh, you didn't hear. This is our house now. James got everything. James appeared behind her, grinning. Yeah, Nova, Mom changed her will. The house, the money, it's all mine. Nova felt a surge of anger and disbelief. You're lying. Mom would never do that. James shrugged. Believe what you want, but the will is clear. This is my house now. Nova stood there on the doorstep of the house she grew up in, feeling like a stranger. The realization hit her hard. Not only had she lost her mother, but now she was losing her childhood home to her greedy brother and his manipulative wife. As Nova walked away, she knew this wasn't the end. She had to fight back, for Mom, for her family, and for what was right. But little did she know, the battle ahead would be tougher than anything she'd faced before. Nova was a bundle of nerves as she walked into the notary's office. The whole situation felt like a bad dream. Losing Mom was hard enough, but fighting with James over her will was something she never imagined. The notary, Mr. Alexander, was an old family friend. He looked up as Nova entered, his face somber. "Nova, I'm so sorry for your loss. Let's get straight to the matter at hand." Nova nodded, trying to steady her voice. "Mr. Alexander, James says Mom left everything to him." "That can't be true." Mr. Alexander shuffled some papers. "Well, let's see what the will says." James and Mila walked in just then, all smugness and arrogance. Mila gave Nova a triumphant smirk. "Ready to lose, Nova." Nova ignored her, focusing on Mr. Alexander. He cleared his throat and began reading the will. Nova's heart was pounding in her chest. "And to my son, James, I leave." Nova braced herself for the worst, but then Mr. Alexander said something that made her heart leap. The sum of $5,000. James's face fell. "What? That's it." Mr. Alexander continued. "And to my daughter, Nova, I leave the family home and the remainder of my estate." Nova couldn't believe it. Relief and disbelief washed over her. Mila was furious. "That's impossible. She promised us the house." Mr. Alexander looked at them sternly. "There's more. It appears your mother made this last will a month ago after expressing concerns about undue pressure from certain family members." James was red with anger. "This is, she wanted me to have the house." Nova couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. "Mom knew what you were doing, James. She knew you were using her." James turned to Nova, his eyes blazing. "You did this. You turned her against me." Mila chimed in, her voice shrill. "We'll contest this. We'll get a lawyer." Mr. Alexander raised an eyebrow. "You're free to do so, but be aware, if it's found that there was any coercion involved in the previous will, there could be legal consequences." James and Mila looked at each other, their confidence wavering. Nova stood up, feeling stronger than she had in months. "Mom saw through your greed. She made sure her last wishes were respected." James stormed out, cursing under his breath, with Mila trailing behind him. Nova stayed back, thanking Mr. Alexander. As she left the office, she felt a mix of emotions. Sadness for losing Mom, relief that her last wishes were honored, and a lingering anger at James and Mila's audacity. It was a regular afternoon when James stormed into the house, his face red with anger and disbelief. $100,000 for you and just a measly $5,000 for me. How is that fair, Nova?" Nova was sorting through some of Mom's papers, but his outburst made her pause. "James, that's what Mom decided. You know she always had her reasons." He slammed his hand on the table, making her jump. "Reasons? What reasons could she possibly have to screw me over like this?" Nova took a deep breath, trying to keep her cool. "Maybe because you and Mila have been bleeding her dry for years." James's face contorted with rage. We deserve that money." That's when Nova found it, tucked away in a drawer, a letter from Mom. Her handwriting was unmistakable. Nova pulled it out and started reading. James's eyes were fixed on her, a mix of curiosity and fear. "What's that?" "It's from Mom," Nova said, her voice steady. "She explains everything here." The letter laid it out in black and white. Mom had originally set aside $100,000 each for James and Nova, but as James and Mila's demands for money grew, she started deducting from his share. Nova looked up at James. His face was a picture of shock. "By the time she wrote her last will, you'd already taken $95,000, James. There was only $5,000 left." James staggered back as if he'd been physically hit. "No, that can't be true." Nova felt a surge of anger. "It's all here, James. Every cent you and Mila took, it came out of your inheritance." He looked lost, his eyes darting around the room. But I didn't know. That's the problem, James. You never knew or cared to know. Nova snapped, her patience wearing thin. He slumped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. What have I done, Nova? Nova put the letter down, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. You've only got yourself to blame, James. You chose this path. James left the house that day, a broken man. Nova watched him go, feeling a sense of justice, but also a deep sadness. Their family was torn apart, not just by grief, but by greed and ignorance. The house, once a battleground of family feuds, was now eerily quiet. James and Mila had left, cutting off all contact with Nova. It was a relief and a curse, leaving Nova to wrestle with the aftermath of their chaos. As Nova sat in the living room, staring at the walls that had witnessed so much, her friend Ella called. "Nova, have you heard about James?" Nova braced herself. "No, what now?" Ella hesitated. "He's been spotted around town, looking for jobs. And Mila, she's been seen with different men, flaunting around like she's single." Nova's heart sank. "And Liam, their son. No sign of him, Nova? It's like they've forgotten they have a child." Nova slammed her fist on the table, fury boiling inside her. "They're irresponsible, selfish. They don't deserve a child." Ella tried to calm her. "Nova, maybe there's something you can do." Her words sparked an idea. "You're right. I'll fight for Liam. He shouldn't suffer because of them." The next day, Nova met with a lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Miss Medicine. She explained everything, her voice trembling with determination. "So you want to pursue custody of your nephew?" Miss Madison asked, her eyes sharp. Nova nodded firmly. "Yes, he's in a toxic environment. I want to give him a better life." Miss Madison leaned forward. "It won't be easy, Nova, but if you're ready to fight, I'm with you." Nova felt a surge of resolve. "I'm ready, whatever it takes." The legal battle that followed was tough. James and Mila were unpredictable, sometimes cooperative, sometimes hostile, but Nova didn't back down. One evening, after a particularly grueling day in court, Henry wrapped his arms around Nova. "You're doing the right thing, Nova. It's hard, but right." Nova leaned into his embrace, exhausted but hopeful. "I just want Liam to be safe, to have a family that cares." The day the judge granted Nova temporary custody of Liam was bittersweet. He was a sweet boy, confused and scared, but he slowly opened up to them. Layla and Lucas adored him, and he brought a new kind of joy into their home. James's reaction was a mix of anger and defeat. "You've taken everything from me, Nova." Nova faced him, her voice unwavering. "I'm protecting Liam. Something you should have done." As James stormed off, Nova realized their relationship might never be repaired, but this wasn't about them. It was about a little boy who needed a stable home life. With Liam, a new adventure began. There were challenges, of course, but also laughter and love. He was becoming a part of their family, and Nova was determined to make it permanent. Looking back, Nova knew she'd made the right decision. It was time for new beginnings for all of them, a chance to heal, to grow, and to build a future filled with love and stability. That was the legacy Nova wanted to leave, a stark contrast to the selfishness and greed that had once threatened to tear them apart. The house, once a reminder of familial discord, was now filled with laughter and the pitter-patter of little feet. Liam had become a part of their lives, his presence a constant source of joy and wonder. One evening, as they were tucking him into bed, Liam looked up at Nova with those big, innocent eyes. "Aunt Nova, am I going to stay here forever?" Nova smoothed his hair, her heart swelling. "Yes, Liam, You're part of our family now." He smiled, his tiny hand gripping hers. "I like it here. Layla and Lucas are fun." Nova kissed his forehead. "We love having you here, sweetie." As Nova walked out of his room, Henry was waiting, a proud smile on his face. "He's really settling in, isn't he?" Nova nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "He is. We're giving him the life he deserves." The next day, Nova received a call from Miss Madison. "Nova, it's official. The court has granted you full custody of Lamb." Nova nearly dropped the phone, tears of happiness welling up. "Thank you, Miss Madison. Thank you for everything." After hanging up, Nova shared the news with the family. Layla and Lucas cheered, hugging Lamb in a group embrace. Even Henry had tears in his eyes. "We're a family," he said, his voice choked with emotion. A real, complete family. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but they had come out stronger. Nova thought about James and Mila, wherever they were. She hoped they would find their way, but her focus was now on the children, their family. In the months that followed, Liam blossomed. He was no longer the timid boy they first met. He was confident, happy, and loved. One day, while they were all in the garden, Lamb came running up to Nova, a dandelion in his hand. "Look, Aunt Nova, I made a wish." Nova crouched down to his level. "And what did you wish for?" He grinned, his eyes sparkling. "I wished we'd all be together forever." Nova hugged him tight. "That's the best wish, Liam, and it's come true." As Nova looked around at her family, she felt a deep sense of peace. They had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. Their future was filled with hope, love, and the promise of new beginnings. This was their story, a testament to the strength of family and the power of love. It was a future of hope, and they were ready to embrace it with open arms.